Now that we are well into fall and winter is quickly approaching, the days are getting shorter and running in daylight is becoming harder. Oisel's premium reflective collection is designed with runner safety in mind. Both highly visible in the dark but subtle in the daytime, thanks to the tonal reflective print that only shines bright when reflecting the light. From tights, shorts, jackets, and tanks to accessories like hats and gloves, with Oisel's reflective collection, you can stay safe and stay seen. It is dark here in Cleveland where I've been running, so I just love Oisel's reflective collection. I'm a big fan of the firecracker tights. The bird pattern is so cute, and they look all over sparkly at night. To check out the firecracker tights and the rest of the reflective collection, go to oisel.com/collection/reflective, or even easier, click the banner link at the top of the Hear Her Sports website at hearhersports.com. Hello and welcome. This is Hear Her Sports, the female athlete podcast for everyone who loves stories by and about women, striving to improve and making a difference in their lives. I am your host, Elizabeth Emery. In each episode, I introduce a female athlete or a woman in the business of sport through a thoughtful conversation about who they are, both on and off the playing field. My guests and I explore the glorious and frustrating issues in sports, history, equity, training, nutrition, and so much more. Thank you for being here and listening. In this episode, I speak to Molly Bookmyer, a speedy distance runner who has qualified for the Olympic Marathon Trials, which will take place in Orlando, Florida this February. Molly and I talk about preparing for the big race, working on tactics, her mindset about some past serious health struggles she and her husband have faced, the joy of running, training in gray Ohio winters, her full-time job, social FOMO, taking risks, and building community. Molly is one of the recently announced Oisel Underbirds, a new program you will hear about in our conversation. The program is an interesting one because it brings together a group of like-minded but far-flung athletes as they work towards a common goal. I'm excited to hear more from the 5 Underbird women between now and the February race. Molly is from Ohio and, in fact, grew up in the Cleveland area, often running in the metro parks where I frequently hike and run. She and I bonded about this a bit offline and then got our conversation rolling. So let's go ahead and meet Molly. Well, since we already talked about Ohio, it's gray. How are the winters for you?
It is gray. We have a little bit of sun today. So training in Ohio in the winter is a little bit difficult. So I'm in Columbus, so we get a lot of ice. So ice is tough to train on. So I use the treadmill a lot. So typically it's cold. And I don't mind the cold. I don't love the cold and gray, but I don't mind it. I can still get out and do my workouts in it. And typically, after a hard effort, I'll come home and take a hot shower or have some hot coffee or something to warm myself back up. But the ice is dangerous. So if it gets icy, I will trade my workouts outside and do them on the treadmill or flip my days around until the ice melts. So that's probably the toughest piece of it, but I make it work to the best of my ability.
Yeah, great. Well, before we get any further, I want to welcome you and thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I mean, I know that you have a full training schedule as well as a full-time job, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
How do you manage having a full-time job and full-time training?
I guess I just don't know any different. I went to college and I ran in college and was also a student in college. And then right out of college, I started working full time. So, and I ran just on the side just for like health and fitness benefits. So I've never not worked. So yes, I'm really busy, but I have, an incredible husband and a really good support system. And we make other sacrifices. Like I don't have a really happening social life. A lot of, my free time is spent running and my husband makes a lot of sacrifices for my running. So I guess that's the piece of it that I give up more than anything else. But I just, keep structure and I like using my mind and my brain. So I think work is good for me. So I just try my best to not get overwhelmed. Sometimes I do, but that's when I lean on my coach and my husband for support.
Tell me, you mentioned the word structure. Like, tell me more about what that means, because I do think that's so important, so that, I don't know, maybe there's ritual or something, or routine, or
Yeah, I would say, I guess, routine. So I love routine. I'm a very type A person. So, I get up in the morning, I have some coffee, maybe a light breakfast, then I go for my morning run. I come home, I log on to work. I start working by 9 every day, and I work all day. And then after work, I'll go for my second run typically. So, just having that structure throughout the day, and my body gets used to it. And then I go to bed, we eat dinner. My husband cooks a lot for me, which is really helpful. And then normally we wind down and we'll like watch some shows together or something. And then I go to bed pretty early. I mean, I fall asleep by about like 8 or 8:30 every night, just because, I'm working all day. So I think just providing that structure, my body knows what to expect every day, allows me to fit everything in.
you said you don't have an active social life. Are you good at telling people no, like when they invite you to things, and, do you have big FOMO?
Yeah, it's tough. I think the biggest piece of it is our family lives across the country. So I think that's the hardest piece, is sometimes we don't get to see our family as often because we live here in Columbus, and I have family, sisters in Raleigh, a sister in Minnesota, a brother in Atlanta. My husband's family's in Cincinnati, and we just had 3 nephews born, and I would love to go visit all of them, but sometimes I'm just too tired and I haven't been able to travel all across the country to visit all of them yet. So I do sometimes get sad that I don't get to spend as much time doing things like that I enjoy. But I'd make sure when I take my downtime and around the holidays, when maybe I have more time off work, that we really spend time with the people that we care about. So yes, it's hard to say no, but I think it just makes the times when I'm able to say yes that much more special.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. I would think that at this point, it's November, you must be laser focused on the Olympic trials in February.
Yeah, so I just ran a marathon a couple weeks ago. So I took about 2 weeks of downtime, and now we are starting to build back up for the trials. Just talking through what my training is going to look like for that, and how we can get as fit as possible and prepare as best as we can for the trials.
What are you doing? What is your training right now?
We're just getting back into it. I'm actually going to run a half marathon next weekend, and then that'll be the last time I race, I believe, before the trials. So we're just getting back into some faster workouts and building back up mileage. So what I did in the fall, for building up to the marathon I ran, I was around like 115 miles a week, maybe a couple weeks at 120 miles. And I think the mileage suited me well. I don't think I need to add a ton more miles as we build to the trials. And I feel like I felt pretty good with that mileage. So I don't think I need to back off too much. So I think we'll try to keep mileage around there, around 115 to 120, maybe a little bit more if we're trying to push it. Um, and again, I think my training this fall really worked well for me. So we did things like one day in the week I did like a double threshold session. So like 2 workouts. So in the morning I would do a fartlek session, like 10 by 3 minutes hard, 1 minute easy, like up and down hills. And then after work, I would do 17 times 1 minute hard, 1 minute easy. So like the mileage for the day was 20 to 21 miles, but it was broken up into 2 workout sessions. And then I would do like a track session one other day in the week. And then on the weekend, I would do a longer workout session, like a longer tempo run, or just a long run. So I think we'll probably keep similar structure that what we did in the fall as we built to the trials, because I think I felt the most fit that I've ever felt. So I think it worked well. But also, we'll have to have some flexibility with weather, if the weather gets tough. And we're thinking, me and my husband are trying to decide if we want to go somewhere a little bit warmer for the month of January, just to avoid some of the ice, but we just haven't figured that out yet.
What is your goal for the half this weekend?
Yeah, so my PR is like 110.50, and I would like to break that. I feel like I'm in really good shape. So as long as the weather holds, I mean, I'd love to PR in the half marathon, and I think I'm at the fitness where I can. So I think it's just going out there and competing, and taking a few more risks than I have in the past in the half marathon. So I think if I go out strong and take a few risks and just see how strong I can finish, training for a marathon, I think in a weird way, it just gives you a ton of strength. So I feel like going to this half marathon, I'm stronger than I ever been. So I'm just going to see what that means.
Tell me what taking risks look like.
Yeah. So I don't know. This is kind of funny. My coach said it to me. He said his daughter said this. I guess he said that sometimes she's like, you just have to risk it for the biscuit. So like you gotta take a chance to see like how good you can be. So I think that means maybe going out a little bit faster than I have in the past, and just trusting that I am really strong. When I ran my half marathon, it's from like last October, and I went out more conservative and I finished really fast, which is great. But I'm proud of that race, but I want to see how much I can get out of myself. And so I think that means maybe just going out a little bit quicker, and seeing how long I can hang on and if that can drive me to a faster PR time. So that's my plan. I'm going to risk it for the biscuit.
Have you ever blown up? Like, I always asked myself that when I was time trialing, like, because I tended to go out conservative and finish fast. And I don't think it was very rare that I would blow up at the end and, struggle to get
Yeah. I
across the
mean,
line.
I definitely have had really some pretty tough races. Like if it's been really, really hot and I go out a little bit too quick, then that sometimes does not end up in my favor. So I've had some bad races where it hasn't played out, but I also feel like I haven't been as fit as I am now. So I think it's all learning at different points in different seasons and different weather and taking that all into consideration. If it's really hot and humid, taking a risk and going out faster is maybe not as smart as if it's if it's a good weather day, maybe you can play more with going out a little bit faster. So balancing all of that stuff. But I definitely have blown up before and it's not fun.
No, it's definitely not fun. And there's nothing you can do about it once it happens.
Yes, yeah.
Not to give away your secrets, but do you have like specific points where you think that you're going to go, you're going to risk it in the half, or you're going to sort of see how it feels and see what the weather is like?
The weather's looking pretty decent, so I think it all depends on who is in the race. So, I think we're going to set a time limit of like how quick my first couple miles can be, and I'm going to try to go out with the leaders, and depending on how quick they go out, to see how long I can hang out with them. And then on the flip side, I think there's also like New York City Marathon was this past weekend and they went out pretty conservative. So we also have the flip side of like, if everybody goes out slower than I want to go, when do I make the call? So I think we have about we're the first 2 miles, I think we're going to have a plan of like what happens if people go out really fast and what happens if people go out slower than I want to go. So I think a lot of it will be determined in the first 2 miles of how to play out the rest of the race afterwards. So, and there's a couple of hills I think in the race. I think the first 6 to 7 miles are pretty flat, and then there's an incline. So we're kind of have to play around that too, where I can maybe take a little bit of a risk in the beginning, but then when we go up the hill, expect a slower mile time. So just playing towards the course when I look at the strategy too.
Will your coach be there on the sideline saying, "Okay, now go"?
I don't know. I mean, he was talking about he was going to see if he can come. I don't think he's going to be able to make the trip. But typically I like to write stuff on my hand or on my wrist or something. So I'll just remember certain cues of when to make a move. So, and normally even if he's out there, I don't see him. So
Sure. Yeah.
I'm focused in my mind. So I just have to make sure that I stay present in the race and don't check out. And I don't know, when I have these funny slogans, they, I don't know, sometimes make me smile. So I'll have to just remember, I don't know, to keep it fun and to execute as best as possible.
You mentioned the heat. So I understand that is a point of contention in the trials coming up. Do you have any thoughts about the heat and the move to change the start time? Let me know about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know right now the plan is the trials are supposed to start at noon in Orlando. So I think there's concern that the race could possibly be warmer than ideal conditions for a marathon. And I think some athletes are concerned about health, and maybe we know that times wouldn't be as fast as they would be if it was perfect conditions. And I can't control the weather that I'm racing in, and I don't really always get to control the weather that I'm training in, right? I feel like I'm pretty tough, and I have to go out in the rain and the wind and the snow and the hot all throughout the seasons here when I'm training. So I think my perspective on it is that I'm just going to get myself as fit as I possibly can get to prepare for the trials, and maybe we'll mix in some stuff like using a sauna to help heat train or acclimate a little bit, maybe doing more treadmill sessions where it's going to be warmer and sticky. And, I mentioned maybe we'll try to go to like somewhere for the month of January to get out of the cold here. So all those are factors. But ultimately, I can only control like how fit I get myself for the race. I can't control what anybody else is doing. I can't control the weather on that day. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to try to stay as positive as I can about the race and work harder or smarter than I have before and take what the day gives me. And if it's going to be really warm, maybe go out a little bit more conservative in the race so I don't blow up.
This is a big race, and athletes approach competition goals in so many different ways. So how about you? Like, what are you thinking about going into an important race like the trials?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and my goal with running has always been to see like how good can I be, and like I've always felt like my biggest competition is like myself and my mind and the voice in my head telling me that I am not fast enough or I'm not good enough to compete with some of the women on that stage. So I think for me personally, what I'm working through is, again, just getting as fit as I can possibly, but also working on, some mental tools to help me believe in myself more and just surrounding myself with the people who do believe in me. And I've learned that going to races where I am like in a positive mindset and feel strong in my training, it's when I have my best days. So I think that's where I'm going to focus. And again, if I can go to the race and obviously I have time goals and place goals that I want to hit that are personal to me. But if I can go out there and get the most out of myself on that day, then hopefully it'll propel me into, more races in the future that are continue to get faster and faster. One day means a lot this time, right? Because it is like you qualify to the trials and then, only 3 people qualify to represent the US in the Olympics. But one day doesn't define who you are as an athlete. We can still have successful careers after that and before that. So just trying to be my best on that day and get the most out of myself.
Are you having to work on nutrition also, like a nutrition plan for the day?
Yeah, so I've struggled before with race day fueling, so it's something that I like played with a lot over the summer as I was preparing for my fall marathon, and I think it worked out pretty well. Again, if it's going to be like more humid or warmer than I'm used to, that might change some of my strategy. I might need to take in more fluids. But I feel like I finally have figured out, nutrition that works for me and how often I need to take a gel or some nutrition in the race. So it's always a work in progress. There's always things. I feel like nutrition is really tricky because it's different for everybody. And it can be different for you on one day if you're not feeling well or something's off a little bit. But we can always learn more. But I think I finally figured out some stuff that's worked for me. So I'm just going to keep doing what works.
Hmm. What does race day look like for you?
Typically, I'll wake up a couple hours before the race. Um, I like to have like toast and honey in the morning. I eat that before all my workouts. I always have like toast and honey as my breakfast with coffee, just to make sure I get food in my stomach. And then and that's like earlier. And then as it gets closer to the race, I'll like sip on a drink with electrolytes or have a gel as we get within like half an hour of the start time. And then I don't know. I just like try to stay as calm as possible. I do like, a 10-minute shakeout before the marathon starts. just to get my body moving, but I don't want to do too much because I don't want to tire myself out.
What does your shakeout look like?
Just like pretty slow, like a pretty slow jog. Probably like 45 minutes before the race starts, I'll start to do it. Just a slow jog for 10 to 15 minutes just to loosen the body up. And then I'll come back and I'll do some drills or stretches, like leg swings, or, I have like some stretches that I like to do to keep my legs moving and loose and open up my hips. So nothing crazy, but just some movement to get my body to wake up a little bit. I like to listen to music before my races. So typically I put headphones in just to kind of tune out everything else around me and just focus on my race that I have coming up. But again, I try to just stay as calm as possible. For me, that means like listening to music that brings me joy, or, my coach will always text me and wish me luck or give me some insight into the day and, some things to remember. And my husband's typically with me race day morning. So he always gives me a hug and wishes me luck. So again, it's just like talking to the people who care about me and who wish me luck and want the best for me, and just getting my mind and body in the right spot to be able to run fast.
We've talked about the stress of racing, and you mentioned just now that you're trying to remain calm. I mean, with a race like the Olympic trials or the Olympics themselves, there's just so much stress on the day, but also in the buildup. So how are you managing all that? I mean, you're talking to podcasts and you're doing all this stuff. So how are you managing the stress and not getting wound up?
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, I will say sometimes I feel like I get overwhelmed just because I think about everything that I have to do, and balancing work and running and everything can feel like a lot. But for me, it helps talking to people that listen to me. So my husband listens to me when I feel stressed or overwhelmed. So I express, my feelings to him, or my coach listens to me. So I express like my feelings to him and he listens. And, they're not going to like say, they're not going to like tear me down about it. They're just going to, support me and just listen. And typically if I can just talk to somebody about it who I know listens, it makes a really big difference for me. Also, the next thing I've learned is just with like everything, with balancing work and running and everything, I am very much the person that like if I think about something 3 months ahead of time, I do get overwhelmed, and I like think about all these things I need to do, and how am I going to do this, and how am I going to do that, and how am I going to get this done, and where are we going to be then, and all of those questions that I don't have answers to right now like get really overwhelming in my head. What I've learned, what helps for me is I just like take the next step. Like I might not have all the answers up to everything that's going to happen. And even like when my coaching, like my coach lays out my training, like I don't, and this is probably different for everybody, but I don't like to look at my training like 3 weeks ahead of time. Like I really trust my coach and knows he's going to give me the right training that I need to do. I just take it like one step at a time or one day at the time. So I just like look at what do I need to do tomorrow to get to this goal down the line. And I've learned that has helped me balance everything and keep my head in the right spot and not get super overwhelmed. Because if I start to think about everything that I need to do, I do get overwhelmed. And then once I get overwhelmed, it takes me a little bit to come back to like a healthier mindset.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you only can take care of one day.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So it's, just one day at a time, baby steps. And, every step leads to the final goal and the final outcome. So that is my approach.
We talked about that you're living in Columbus. I'm imagining that you mostly train by yourself. I mean, is there a community of other runners who are sort of have your similar aspirations?
Yeah. So I do like 90% of my training alone, but I feel like I build community like in a different way. So my coach is local and my husband bikes with me a lot. So my coach will come out to my track workouts like once a week. And then on the weekend, when I have my really long runs, my husband bikes with me. And then, I have a couple of friends who run, a couple of women who qualify for the 2020 trials. I run with them every once in a while. And then, even though there's not maybe people running at the speed that I'm running at, Columbus has a really big running community. There's a couple of different running stores that have training groups for marathons and half marathons, and I see them out there every weekend, and, I wave to them and they wave to me. I don't know, it's a really supportive community, and throughout the years, I've gotten to know a lot of them. Some of them personally, some of them just by like waving to them on the bike path, and so that makes me feel a part of the community. And I get to go, sometimes I'll go to local schools and talk to high school students, so that makes me feel a part of the community. So even though I do a ton of training by myself, I guess I've learned, like, I don't mind it, because I'm able to fill my cup with building a community in different ways. So sometimes I wish I had more training partners, but actually, I feel lucky that I'm fortunate to have everything that I do have here in Columbus, and fortunate that I've been able to build such a supportive community around me here. That's what I have, and so I just make the most of that.
And you're part of this Oiselle Underbird program. I mean, I would think that would be a big, really wonderful gift to be able to connect to women who do have the same aspirations as you do that are all over the country.
Yeah, the program started back in September, and it's been such an amazing opportunity, and I'm really grateful that Oiselle came up with this program, because I think it's like a perfect fit for connecting and building our community that we have and expanding it to other women who have similar goals. It is really interesting because there's 5 of us, and all of us have really different backgrounds that have led us to running at the level that we're running at. And, we all live in different parts of the country, but, running brings us together, and we all have similar goals at the trials. And, ultimately we all want to be the best runners that we can be and be the best people that we can be. And so, yeah, I've been able to expand on my community even more, which has been such a cool opportunity. And it's given me, platforms like this to help share my story and connect with you and other people even more, which that helps me feel a part of the running community too. So it's been really fun, and I'm really grateful for the other women on the team, and for Oiselle for giving us the opportunity and the platform to connect with other people across the country.
For listeners who don't know what the Underbird program is, can you describe it?
Yeah, so it's they selected 5 women from across the country who have qualified for the trials, or who are attempting to qualify for the trials, and they're supporting us by giving us a team to be a part of, some money to help travel to the trial, so we're all going to get to stay in the same place when we go to race at the trials, which is going to be really fun. I've never gotten to do that before. It's also giving us opportunities like connecting us with people like you and podcasts to share our stories. So I think it's all just about helping, us get to the trials healthy and happy and feel supported and have a larger network of people to connect with, while sharing our stories that might look a little bit different than other people who are, fully sponsored athletes. It gives us, who are not fully sponsored athletes, an opportunity to build that community and have some additional support heading into the trials.
Yeah, it's a great program. They do a great job.
And it's been really fun. It's really fun to connect. We all love running, and it's been really fun to get to meet other women across the country.
Hello, just a quick word. I'd love to encourage you to order all of your books via our bookshop page at hearhersports.com/books. We're now in that holiday shopping season, so take advantage of a great organization that supports local bookshops and this podcast. On our main bookshop page, find recommendations by guests and even books they've written. Enjoy The Keeper by Kelsey Ervick, which would be a great gift for all your soccer-loving friends and family. Or get your copy of Brave Enough by last week's Hear Her Sports guest, Jessie Diggins. In her book, she tells inside details of becoming and being an elite athlete. It hasn't been all glitter, so read Jessie's story about how she made it work and raced to success. Check out all our book lists and make your order today at hearhersports.com/books.
Hi, listeners. We wanted to take a moment to tell you about another podcast from Evergreen Podcasts and Sound Talent Media called Pit Lane Parlay. Pit Lane Parlay is the go-to podcast for IndyCar and motorsports-related news. Each episode, we discuss things like our favorite drivers, news clips from the last week, and generally giving each other a hard time about predictions we've made in the past and or life stories that have come up recently. We really have a lot of fun with it and really enjoy each other's company, and we hope you can come join us too. Join Pit Lane Parlay by following us on your favorite podcast today.
Now, let's return to the conversation with Molly Bookmyer, an Olympic marathon trials qualifier, to hear her stories about the serious health issues she and her husband have faced. In the past, you've talked quite a bit about your health battles that you've faced and also your husband has faced. And I don't really want to focus on that because you have talked about it before. But I also don't want to ignore that time period in your life because, those years must have changed you.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I do feel like sometimes I don't want to be defined by my past, but it has helped shape who I am as a person and as an athlete. So yes, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor during college, and I had 2 brain surgeries to remove the tumor. And, I had a seizure while running on a treadmill, and all of that stuff, was a difficult time to go through, but I used running as a tool to help me get through the difficult times. When I was able to start, I had to start by walking, and I would start walking again. And then, I had to build back strength. So I had to do some physical therapy. So it was a really long journey for me to get back to running. But I think it also gave me time totally away from the sport and, to figure out some of my other health issues and to really appreciate how special life is and how much I love moving my body, whether at a competitive level or not. So I would say it changed me and it made me look at life a little bit differently. But more than my struggles, right after I got married, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. And that was honestly probably a harder period of time for me to go through because it's really difficult to watch somebody that you love go through a really uncertain time and go through a lot of pain and trauma. So that was really difficult for me. So I leaned on running a lot during that time to just help me mentally get through some of the tough times. And it gave me space. Again, I was working full time and taking care of my husband full time. So I would have to drop him off for him to do his chemo every day. And then I have to go to work all day and then I have to pick him up. And so running gave me the time and the space to have an hour to myself to clear my head after, struggling with some stuff and watching him struggle with all the treatments he was going through. So it definitely gave me a new perspective and appreciation for people going through difficult moments of their life.
Do you remember your sort of mental state when you were going through those 2 periods where you were struggling with your own health issues and, your husband was struggling with his and sort of how you managed to get out of that? I mean, it's been a while since that time, so you have a little bit of perspective.
I mean, I think when I was going through it, I don't know, I guess I feel like I'm like I like to accomplish a task. So for me, the task was to get healthy, or the task was to when I was clear to start walking on the treadmill, I would start walking on the treadmill. So it was just always taking it one step at a time. And, I had a lot of setbacks and I had to take time off work. So I was living at home with my parents for, quite a few number of weeks. So I think it was tough for me at that time, but I just took it, one day at a time. And I think I just learned a lot about myself, and I got to, I got a dog, which made me happy. So I guess I don't remember as much of struggling while I was going through stuff because my mom was taking really great care of me, and I had the simple joys of I got a puppy and I got to play with my puppy and that stuff. So watching my husband go through it, I feel was more difficult. And that's where it was tough for me to show up to work every day and to work, sometimes I would leave work early and people maybe who didn't know what was going on in my life would be like, why is she leaving? And so that stuff was difficult to deal with. And I think that's why running was so important to me and is still so important to me, because it gave me space to think through a lot of stuff and maybe help me process what I was going through and what he was going through. And yeah, I don't know you don't have a choice but to get through it, right? So we just did the best that we could and leaned on the people around us to help us get through it and took it one day at a time. And, eventually we were fortunate that we were able to get through it. But I think that's what I've learned, as tough as life gets, there's always a way out. Like we always get through it. And if you are with people you love and care about, it's easier to get through it. So I've just really learned to lean on the people who care about me.
You sort of talked about it a little bit, but how are you using running now? I mean, is it the same? I mean, now you're not going through having to take care of your husband who's going through cancer treatment, but we all have things that we're dealing with all the time. So does running fulfill the same sort of role in your life?
Yeah, well, I think now my goals are different in running. Like before, I just was using it as like an outlet. I still think like running makes me a better person. Like when I'm running and competing, I feel like I'm the best version of myself because it gives me that space and that time to clear my head. But running has taken on a bigger role than I think it has before, just because now I'm trying to race at a higher level and become the best athlete that I can be. So it's similar in the fact that it still gives me the space to clear my head, but I absolutely love running. Like it makes me feel alive. It gives me opportunities like this to connect with different people. It gives me opportunities to connect with my community and to give back to like high school students who are running and training and trying to achieve different goals. So I think, yes, it has helped me and it still helps me like clear my mind, but now I think it is providing me with even more opportunities um, to help me fulfill my life and give back to the community and show other people that life can get pretty tough, but there's always a way out. And we can get through tough times and you can come out even healthier and stronger and maybe not better, but just with a new perspective on life. And you can keep doing things, post traumatic events in your life. So that was a long answer to your question,
No,
but yes and no. Yeah.
yeah, great. Maybe you've already answered it, but for you, what's the most important aspect about your story?
I think it's tough. I think everybody these days, looks at social media and thinks that everybody has these great lives and things are easy for certain people. But I think for me, sharing my story helps me show other people that life can be really tough. And, things don't always work out the way you want them to work out or think that they're going to work out, but we can always get through the tough periods of time. And so I just want to show other people that if you're going through, a really difficult moment in your life, you can't give up. Like when my husband was going through chemo, you don't have the choice to stop chemo. I mean, you could, but he's fighting for his life, so he needs these treatments, even though they're making him feel really weak. And so that's what I want to show people, that like you can go through some pretty difficult moments in life. And even with running, not every race I run is the best race or exactly what I wanted to accomplish on that day, but you just keep moving forward. And if you keep moving forward with people who love and support you, then to me, you're living a full life. And it's not always going to be easy, but it's always going to be worth it as long as you do what you love.
We're sitting here, the sun is out. We live close enough to each other that I can say the sun is out a little bit in both where we are. We're both healthy right now for the most part. So it's easy to say, oh, yeah, like tough times, you can get past them. Like, what was your mental state during the tough time? Like, did you still have that same attitude in the moment, thinking like, I just got to get through this? Or like, where were you? What was it like back then?
I think I just feel like I'm typically a positive person. Like obviously I was really, I remember the day that I found out that my husband had cancer. I was really upset. So it's not like every day was great. We had some really tough days, and the first day he started chemo, he was allergic to the chemo and he couldn't breathe and I had to call in the nurses. So like it was just a lot of like, I feel like every day was kind of chaos. But, on the flip side, I got to spend a lot of time with my husband, and we got to I got to learn a lot about him, and we did things that made us happy at the time. So, whether that was like visiting family or spending time with our dog or, going on a walk, just finding little joys in the everyday moments of life, I think was really important to us. So again, yeah, I think it just goes back to like, at that time, if I was trying to think about like, oh my gosh, is he going to beat cancer? Is he going to get through these treatments or whatever? As I talked about before, like I would probably have gotten really overwhelmed, like I'm not the type of person, I don't have all the answers of where I'm going to be in a year, where I'm going to be in 5 years, trying to figure that all out very much overwhelms me. But I can take every day and I can make the most out of every day. And, like even like silly things, like I remember one night we were in the hospital and it was like post a surgery and, he was all tied up to the monitors and I was like sleeping in the hospital room with him. There was a couch and I was allowed to stay the night in the room because he had a private room. And I remember I think he sat up and like stood up because he had to go to the bathroom and he like set off all these alarms. All these nurses came running into the room because these alarms were going off because he had to go to the bathroom. I don't know. I still look back on the day and like kind of laugh because it's like, he had no idea, right? He just had to go to the bathroom and it's like he stood up and like we had like 5 nurses come running down the hallway to figure out what was going on. So I don't know, just finding little moments of like that made us laugh, like little moments in the day of things that even if you're going through a tough time, maybe make you laugh or bring you back to the simple joys of life and making the most out of every day. If I think about things too far down the line, I do get overwhelmed. And I think that's the same thing today as it was when we were going through the treatments.
It's amazing that all happened like pretty much moments after you got married.
Yeah, it was not the best timing. It was, yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the, I think that's still something that sometimes I struggle with a little bit, just is like, right, it's like we got married, we went on our honeymoon and we came back and he was complaining about back pain and he was complaining about back pain for a while. And he even went to the doctor like before we got married and they didn't do all the tests. And so, I sent him back to the doctor again. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, now I can look back and be like, our anniversary, like we're celebrating that he overcame cancer and stuff. But, in the beginning, it was kind of like a sore reminder of like, yes, it's our anniversary, but also like, it's also the anniversary that he was diagnosed with cancer, which that was tough for me for a little bit. But I don't know, again, for me, talking helps. I don't mind sharing my story because hopefully it can help somebody. And, I have really supportive husband and we have a really great relationship. So we talk a lot and I don't know. I think the more I talk about it, the more it helps me. So,
yeah. Well, before we wrap up, do you have any final words?
I just want to say, like, again, I'm really excited for the future of running and I'm really grateful that Wazelle is giving us platforms to share our stories. I hope that with like sharing my story that other women out there or other people out there who are maybe going through a tough time can take it one day at a time and know that, life can get better and you can get through the hard moments of your life and just lean on those around you because you don't know when life can change. But if you're doing stuff that you love doing and you're with people who love you, then I feel like you're living a pretty successful life. So that's my goal.
Well, wonderful. And thank you so much again for being here on Hear Her Sports. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And that's it for today's episode. Thank you to Molly Bookmyer. Be sure to send her good training vibes in the lead up to her Olympic trials in February. I love businesses that support female athletes, so here's a heartfelt big thank you to Wazelle for supporting this episode and for supporting Molly through their Underbirds program. Head on over to the Hear Her Sports website for links to learn about the other Underbird runners, the Wazelle Reflective Collection, and all the Wazelle running apparel made by and for women. It's gift-giving season, and Wazelle would be a great idea for all your favorite women runners. On our website, there are easy-to-find ways to reach me, sign up for the newsletter, listen to all the episodes, browse through show notes, and to support the show through our bookshop page and buy me a coffee. Go to hearhersports.com. And as I always remind you, be sure to tell everyone you know about the Hear Her Sports podcast. If you are new to Hear Her Sports, there are lots of former guests to discover and hear from, like marathoner Molly Seidel, Jay Grunke of The Balanced Runner, or Jenny Wynn, founder of the Sports Bra in Portland, Oregon. And that's just for starters. Hear Her Sports is a proud member of Evergreen Podcasts. For more information or to check out other shows on the network, please visit evergreenpodcast.com. I just love sharing all these stories by female athletes. I'm super glad you are here and hope you got something from the episode to motivate your own training. Thank you for listening and for being part of the growth of women's sports. Until next time, bye-bye.
Hi, listeners. We wanted to take a moment to tell you about another podcast from Evergreen Podcasts and Sound Talent Media called Pit Lane Parlay. Pit Lane Parlay is the go-to podcast for IndyCar and motorsports-related news. Each episode, we discuss things like our favorite drivers, news clips from the last week, and generally giving each other a hard time about predictions we've made in the past and or life stories that have come up recently. We really have a lot of fun with it and really enjoy each other's company, and we hope you can come join us too. Join Pit Lane Parlay by following us on your favorite podcast today.